if you want your type and what dating apps you're on, just in case, if it works out, right? You never know. But seriously, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Jennifer Kurzawa, by the way, if I haven't met you. I run the T Network, the transgender group here in Central Florida, and I like doing stuff like this.
I am. Is this on?
She's
All
recording this, Sarah.
right. Test. Oh, now it's on. There you go. Hi, I'm Melody Maya Monet. I go by Maya, and I am a lesbian and single and on Tinder and her. Yeah.
My name is Phoenix, and I'm a straight trans guy.
Hello, my name is Mella Johnson. I know it said Dixon Mella, but I'm in the process of changing my name again. So I prefer to officially go by Mella. That is my birth name. I like it. It's unique. And that's the name I swore I'd make famous all over the world. And I am a gay transgender man.
All right. So, thinking how I want to start this one. I usually do a kickoff question. So, I think my kickoff question is actually going to be, why did you want to be on this panel?
Well, for those of you who don't know, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about sex a lot. So it just seemed like a natural fit. That, and I have quite a lot of trouble dating, so I think my experiences in that regard might be somewhat useful to those of you who are also in the same boat I am.
I don't know why I'm here. That's the truth.
You just say yes to stuff and
Yeah.
like.
I came here because my experience is very was very jarring for me. I transitioned at the age of 42. I'm 47 now, and I was socialized as to be a heterosexual woman. So when I got into the gay cisgender dating scene, it was a shocker because I couldn't understand why I kept getting sent penis pics and butt pics. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I thought we were just getting to know each other. So it's just my experiences learning about a dating world that I have no clue about.
All right, so real quick, Shay, thank you for joining us. We just got started, so you haven't missed any of the good stuff yet. But I did want to go ahead and let you take a second. We're introducing ourselves, and I'll put your two things into one, like what they've said so far. So just who you are, your sexual orientation, and I've left it open if you want to tell people your status and any online dating apps that you're on, you can do that as well. And then why you decided to be on this panel.
I'm single, by the way.
See?
Hi. Um, I'm Shay. What was the other one? Sorry. Oh, I am a heterosexual trans woman. I guess that's what they
Well,
would
we
call
can't tell you.
that. Oh, well, I date men. I date men, cisgendered men, and trans men. I've dated a couple trans men. Um, I am not currently active on any apps. I used to be on Tinder and OkCupid and Grinder. Um, so yeah, um, yeah, that was
And
about
then
it.
why you were doing the
Oh,
panel.
oh, I chose to do the panel because once again, I believe having positive visibility of people in our demographics are in any capacity is a great thing. And I just think that being a voice of somebody who I've honestly coming out as trans, I saw that I was kind of in a minority a lot of times because most of the trans women I know have wives and girlfriends and stuff. So I was like, that's kind of new. So yeah, I decided to do it because of that.
Awesome, thank you. Um, so I like asking questions. So raise your hand if you're single, and raise your hand if dating sucks. Dating sucks. So I don't think any of us are gonna, be shocked by some of those stories. But obviously this is a very specific discussion around your experiences dating and what any of you are going through. So I am gonna go ahead now. If I don't get questions, I will start asking questions of everyone. But I'm gonna go ahead and open it up. Does anybody want to start with a question? Anybody have a question for any of the panelists or all of the panelists, preferably around sex or dating?
I do. In transitioning, what I discovered was soon after transitioning, the dating pool seemed very limited in reference to who you date and if you tell them or when you tell them and that kind of thing. So could you touch on that? It's like, how do you get started? What's the best steps as far as developing a social life?
Wow. Well, I guess I'll kick that off. Uh, I think your anecdotal experience is borne out by the numbers in terms of who's willing to date transgender people. There was a study that actually was published in Them magazine late last year talking about the number of cisgender people, the number of straight cisgender people, gay cisgender people, even bisexual cisgender people who would be willing to date a trans person. And this was actually part of a larger study that was done on dating relationships. It wasn't specifically just about trans people. That was just one of the questions they asked. And what we found was uh, among cisgender straight people, be it both men and women, that it was very, very small numbers who'd be willing to date transgender people. And what was even more curious is that cisgender women seem to be more open to dating transgender men, and and cisgender men more open to dating uh, the opposite. So it was like the one that you wouldn't think they would actually date, or actually, I said that wrong. Cisgender women were more open to dating trans women, and cisgender men more open to dating trans men. So it was more like genitalia was more important to them than their actual gender identities. Um, the numbers climbed from there through the gay community until you got to the top, which was for bisexual people. And even them, the percentages were somewhere in the 50s. So yeah, it's tough out there. It's extremely tough. In terms of how do you develop a social life, I think one of the things I noticed, I've worked at Southern Nights for years as one of the photographers there, and I work both Friday nights and Saturday nights, which are the ladies' nights or rather the men's nights and the ladies' nights. And what I have noticed is that where I went out and I just kind of try to be, blend in with everybody and just socialize with everybody. What I've noticed is that when I do notice a transgender person there, they tend to like self-segregate themselves into like a corner of the club, and they hang around with each other, and they don't mix with the general population of the club. Sometimes I'll just see a single trans woman standing there on the dance floor on the side and not saying or doing anything. Now, obviously, I can't tell everybody who's transgender just by looking at them, but these are the ones that I do notice. And I always I always want to go up to them and say, "Hey, I'm transgender too. Why don't you come with me, or why don't you let me introduce you to people?" But they always seem to be very reserved. So I think sometimes we are guilty of marginalizing ourselves in that regard. Um, so I think one of the things I've had a lot of success in is not just becoming part of the transgender community after it came out, but also becoming part of the lesbian community. And I'm deeply a part of that community. So, and I think part of it is because of my willingness to just go up to people and say hello, hi, and not treat being transgender as something that makes me somehow different.
Um, sorry. Um, what she said is kind of true on a lot of things where yes, I've seen trans women out at the club personally segregating themselves because honestly, I know at least from my own experiences, you want to go out, you want to be social, you want to meet guys in a normal way, you want to talk to people in a normal everyday situation. And sometimes, depending on your level of transition or your level of passingness, is it heavily makes your comfort level, or it's heavily in tune with your comfort level in social spaces. So sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be physically comfortable, but um, not necessarily as well received, but no one there is going to harm you. But going out to quote unquote cisgender heterosexual environments, um, I get numbers, I get guys' phone numbers, guys buy me drinks, things like that. It's very a normal situation. But also on the other side of that, the dichotomy is that you have people who know you're trans and they don't like that you're trans. And so that kind of flips the dynamic of the room for you, because then you don't know what is safe and what's not safe. So I think that's why a lot of trans women find themselves at gay clubs, or at least myself. Um, as far as the dating pool getting smaller, well, I've only dated men, so so I've only seen this side of dating. It's very difficult, I must say, in the fact that it's easier to find someone to have sex with than it is to find somebody to actually be in love with. And um, it means opening yourself up in a lot of situations where it's a little bit frightening. It's a little bit off putting to yourself and your normal comfort levels. But to be social and have a social surrounding, you kind of have to find a place where you're comfortable in your own skin, presenting however you are to society and accepting what comes. I know in my early transition, um, where I was not passing at all in no spaces, is where I made a lot of friends. I made a lot of allies. I made a lot of people who cared about me and my situation. So I just feel as though when you're authentic to yourself, you kind of draw in people to yourself sometimes.
Hmm. I'm still thinking about this one. It's a good question though. Actually, I've had to ask myself over and over: is the dating pool shrinking, or am I shrinking it by alienating myself from certain things? And that might be what's happening for me, because there was never a problem before, and now recently I had this strange experience of meeting somebody, and I thought we were just hanging out as friends, and they were more interested in more. And once I realized that, then I realized that I had to tell them something. I had to tell them I'm a trans man before you get a little carried away. You need to know I'm a trans guy. And they were like, what is that? They didn't even know. So then I had to explain it. So then suddenly I realized that this is something I'm going to have to go through. And I don't really want to do that, you know. And I don't really feel like educating people today, um, at least not right now. So so now the tricky part is, meeting somebody that really isn't going to care about it. That I don't have to educate them. This takes a lot of energy. And so I'm just spending a lot of time trying to enjoy my spaces and the people I meet. And I think I'm shrinking my opportunities right now. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
I shrink it myself.
Hi, thank you. That is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that, because it encapsulates my entire experience. I transitioned back in 2013, and as a heterosexual woman, I had no problem getting men. I caught men like bees to honey. I had no problem attracting men. But as a gay trans man, I am entering a culture that stereotypically, right or wrong, is known for worshiping the male form, a male form that I do not have. I do not have ripped abs and pecs. I don't have a penis. So I am desiring to be with a man that loves all the things physically that I don't have. So when I signed up on the dating apps, when I would fill out the profiles on Craigslist, back when they had that, and I had to state, I am pre-op transgender. Like, I'm letting you know up front, I don't have the physical things that you want, but this is who I am, because I didn't want to waste my time chatting with someone and then they're like, okay, hey, show me what you got. And it's like, okay, and then now they've cut off all conversation with me. And like Phoenix said, sometimes I would say I'm transgender, and then I would get a response back, a text message with a question mark, like, what? And I'd be like, how do you not know what a transgender person is? So then I'm like, okay, I'm just looking for a date, or I'm just looking to get laid, and now I got to go into education. Okay, this is what a transgender person is. So it got to the point where I would fill out the app ads, and I would just say, I am transgender. This is what transgender is. If you don't know what a transgender person is, don't even bother contacting me, because then I would just get sick of it. And then I would have conversations with men who would be like, oh, okay, I get it. You just like dressing up like a man. But don't worry, in the bedroom, I'm going to treat you like a woman. Ugh! Like, no, that is not what I am looking for. And so finally I just got really disgusted with, the apps, Jacked, Grinder, and I was ignorant, I was naive. I didn't know exactly that they were hookup apps, because I'm 47. I came up in the age of the chat lines, or you put an ad in the back of the newspaper saying, single black male wants, stuff like that. So this hookup culture is completely foreign to me. And so when I signed up for Jack and Grinder, I'm thinking, well, fantastic. This is a place where gay men can meet like-minded men, and they won't mind that I'm transgender. So let me make a profile right now. So then I set up my profile, and I get the hello, how are you? And I'm like, see, I don't know what I was so worried about. And then they send me another message, and it's a picture of their penis. What is this? I'm like, I know, so why are you sending me exactly pictures of your penis? No, I just want to talk and get to know you. So I said, okay, maybe I should do my research on how gay cisgendered men date, because I clearly don't. I missed the memo, because what kind of apps are they? And so when I found out, no, these are hookup apps. They're for people to hook up and have sex, and that's what all that is. And like I said, being socialized as a heterosexual woman, I'm used to men approaching me. Hey, how are you? Let's go out. Let's go get to know each other. But for gay men, it's like, hey, let's get together. Let's do this. And it's like, no, 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 no. I'm not doing that. So I'm kind of resigned myself to, like, okay, maybe I'm gonna be alone, because I'm not comfortable sleeping with randoms. I'm not gonna do random hookups until I find a man that loves and accepts me for who I am. I'm just not gonna do that. I'm gonna find and I believe he's out there that accepts and loves me for who I am. And then just being a transgender gay man, a lot of people, they don't even understand that. Like, why the hell are you becoming a man so you can date other men? That don't make no sense. You could have just stayed a woman and put on a strap on. No, that's not what I want to do. So it's educating and explaining to people at the same time, just trying to look for love just like everybody else. So my dating pool has gotten tremendously smaller because I'm older, I'm transgender, and I'm gay. So I understand that I'm probably going to be alone for a long time, and I can accept that. But I'm not going to, lower my standards or change who I am just to fit in, because I feel like on this journey that I am going on, I would do more damage to myself mentally and emotionally if I allowed myself to act how I think gay men want me to act, how I think the world should want me to act, and give in to what I should pretend to be accepted. That would kill me in the long run. And I'm not going to do that.
Really good answers. I'm gonna you you touched on something that I think was gonna come up anyway, so I'm just gonna put it out there right now, and that's the idea of, like, when do you tell someone? And I've talked to a lot of people about it. I know people that, like you said, put it front and center right at the top. There's people that say, no, I don't. That shouldn't have to be how I lead in. So maybe could each of you share kind of your experience with that, and kind of your, I guess, your take on on when that, when and how to do that?
Um, excuse me. I wanted to add on to something Dixon was saying as well, is that I think age is another factor that factors into this. I think a lot of us as transgender people also tend to come out a little later in life. There are of course young transitioners. So I'm 48. So I always like to say that my dating pool is now a dating puddle, and a part of that and part of that is because I get filtered out in a lot of these dating apps. I've tried dating people in their 20s, but it's very difficult. And it just so happens that people in their 20s tend to be a little more open-minded about these things as well. So the older you get, the more you're going to run into resistance from folks who don't quite understand that you're transgender and gay, because I'm as well as a lesbian. And you're also just going to find fewer single people, and so it becomes a very difficult thing to navigate. In terms of what you were saying, uh, I tend to disclose before things become intimate in any way. I've actually tried, like with dating apps, like disclosing up front or later. Or I haven't found a whole lot of difference, believe it or not, in either case, except that it's when I do disclose up front, it saves me from having to disclose later, usually, if they even read it, because sometimes they don't even read those parts of they just see your picture and they swipe right. Um, but I tend to disclose before things get intimate in any way, and by that I mean even just a kiss. Um, I'm fortunate in that I'm fairly well known in the lesbian community, so most people do know I'm transgender. However, there have been situations, especially when I was working at the club, where people would come up to me and they say, "Well, you've been working here for 2 years and I didn't know." Um, the weirdest situation I had was we're going to talk about sex. So yeah, I was having sex with a girl, and we were, let's say, on a break from that experience, and I was laying back, and her phone went off, which was on the table next to me. And so I picked it up to hand it to her, but I could see what the text said as I was handing it to her, and it was from her best friend. Basically said, "Oh my God, did you realize that Maya is a transgender woman?" So her friend was outing me before, I guess, she made a mistake, quote unquote, or did something that she wasn't aware of. Of course, I had already told her and she knew, but that's the kind of world we live in, even among, and these are people in their 20s as well. The so-called queer community, where you think there'd be more understanding and more acceptance, being trans is still considered a gotcha. Like, you're getting, having being fooled in some way. So she was letting her friend know something, that really was not her place to tell her at all. But yeah, so I do tend to tell people before we have sex for sure, because and it's something I recommend, whether you're gay or straight for that matter, because disclosure afterwards can sometimes lead to dangerous situations. Maybe less dangerous with women than with men, but there's always an element of danger.
Unfortunately, what she said is really, really true. So, which is why I disclose everything up front. So there's no mystery about anything. Um, I was raised in a generation of the Matthew Shepards and the Tina Brandons, and you know what I'm saying? And if you don't tell anybody, something bad can definitely happen to you. I also see this narrative playing out in the media a lot of times where it's like, oh, they tricked somebody. Oh, I mean, look at her. You wouldn't know. You know what I'm saying? And that dynamic is kind of a lie because a lot of the men who choose to date me because of that. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the thing that makes me special. It's the thing that kind of sets me apart from a lot of women. So I try to put myself in my own demographic, my own place. If I'm to find love, I'm going to find love for who I am. So I kind of try to be myself out of the gate.
God, I feel really old sitting here now. I'm 58. Talk about the gene pool getting drained, right? Or the dating pool rather. Yeah, it's like very shallow at this age, probably. But the good news is that testosterone kind of makes you look a little bit younger. So most people think I'm 40. The problem with that is now I got to tell them, hey man, I'm 50 something, you know. So I got recently this 28-year-old girl trying to pick me up at the pier when I'm fishing, and it started with like very I don't know. Somehow it started about where do you work, what are you doing, something something, and she ends up with my business card. So now she calls me every day, but I'm like I'm 50 something, but she doesn't care, you know. So if I wanna if I really want to run somebody off, I need to just tell them I'm trans. You know, and I'm gonna run. So I'm gonna tell you if I'm trying to run you off, and you're probably gonna go away. And but that doesn't always work because I was at my shop, and all of a sudden I get somebody's texting me, said, you know, and I have a plant shop, and they're saying, hey man, sexy, I'm watching you taking care of your plants there. You're doing something something, and I'm like knowing there really is somebody watching me. They know what I'm doing. This is kind of freaky, you know. And I'm thinking, how the hell did they get my number? It was on my shirt. so I'm like, and it took, and for a few hours, I'm thinking and I'm thinking, this is just too weird, you know. I'm feeling really weird. And then I get another text a few hours later, and it's a picture of this guy, and he's like posing for me, you know. And I'm like thinking, this guy looks familiar. So I asked a friend of mine, do we know this guy? He looks familiar, but I forget things, you know, but I think I know this guy. So I thought about it for like, you know, I don't know, a couple weeks. And I see him on Facebook. And I'm like, we got mutual friends. And I'm like, send him a friend request. And I said, dude, come and see me at my shop. So he comes there, and I said, man, I think we know each other and we got mutual friends. But I'm not a gay man. I'm a straight guy. And listen, man, I'm transgender. So I'm thinking he's going to go away. He did not go away. You know, he's like, when are we going to dinner and all this kind of stuff, you know. And, you know, I want to be your first experience. And I'm like, whoa. So there's, you know, this is the kind of action I'm having now. So
Sounds like
if I'm in trouble now. But if I met somebody, you know, and I'm interested in pursuing something more than hanging out as friends, right away I'm going to have to tell them because, like you're saying about being in a dangerous situation or somebody feeling like, you know, you have been lying to me or anything. I don't want any problems like that. So I want it to be known right up front. It's got to be authentic and fluid situation. A very fluid and authentic relationship of any kind is what I'm looking for.
It's funny that you say you tell people you're trans to run them away because I do that to heterosexual men a lot. One of the funniest things I think I used to say, wow, if I was a lesbian, I would be having a great time because I get hit on by women all the time. And then I have to explain to them, you know, I like men, and then they get that confused look on their face like, what? What? And I'll never forget, I tell people this hilarious story. I was in Walmart, as I like to refer to as Disney for adults, or at least for myself. And this guy comes up to me, he shoots his shot, and I said, I'm transgender and I'm gay. I'm a transgender gay man. And he looked at me, he said, well, what that mean? And I'm like, okay, here I gotta go into my educational. I said, that means that I like gay men. He rears his head back, and I kid you not, he literally ran away from me. And I just started laughing my head off. But the question, I tell people up front, like I'm very upfront about who I am, and I'm gay, transgender male, and I prefer men. You know, so I don't want to waste anybody's time, or I want them to waste my time, or get them trying to change me. A few instances I'll get hit on by, you know, straight men because even though I have a masculine look, I mean, I'm heavy, I'm still curvy, so it's, I guess they think, okay, this is somebody that just likes to present, you know, this butch woman. She just don't want to do all the pretty stuff and wear makeup. And that's okay, I can get with that. And then I have to tell them, no, I like men, I like gay men. And then they're just all confused and stand there with the look on their face. And then they're like, all right, okay. You know, so I just have to, that's my experience. Just get it out of the way and be honest. So nobody's time is wasted.
Great. Thank you. I will throw something in. One of the other reasons I was glad to be the person moderating this panel is I am a cis woman, am pan. If you know what pan means, it's I don't care what gender you are to date you, it's who you are. And I have dated pretty much the whole spectrum. And it's it's been great to educate people because you wouldn't believe some of the questions I get being someone who's dating someone who's trans, right? When I have been, the questions have been everything from, you know, makes sense, I want to educate you, to offensive. And I think for me, the saddest thing, and part of what I really want to help get the work, get education out on this, not only to help people date, because it's hard for everybody, right? But also because the saddest thing for me has been the response from the LGBT community. Um, I had an ex-girlfriend who identified as lesbian uh, find out that I was dating a trans woman after after she and I stopped dating, and come to find out she was telling other people that I was dating a he/she. And I was like, and this is somebody I had been with who knew my passion for the trans community, who I thought, you know, would never talk about, you know, and so that's the kind of stuff for me that just floors me. That's part of the problem, you know, and I know some people feel like, oh, it's harder if you're, you know, trying to date gay men or trying to date, but I think it's a problem across the board. And so I think that we got to talk about it. We got to get the questions out there. Speaking of which, I'm going to need somebody to ask a question now. But anyway, I just wanted to share that because that's one of the big reasons that I wanted to do this. This is very important to me. So, you have a question? Oh, yeah. Excellent. I don't think this will reach out a little bit.
Thank you. So I actually have a question um, about the phenomenon that a lot of trans people have to deal with, mostly trans women from what I've heard of stories, but the phenomenon of the chaser. How much do you feel the truth in that, and how do you deal with someone if you find out they are like fetishizing your identity in some way, shape, or form, and like do you try to continue a relationship with them and educate them, or what is the process there? I just am curious from an outside perspective. I hear a lot about the chaser phenomenon, like bummer LGBT communities amongst trans people, so I would like to hear more about what you do in that situation.
I got something to say, but I'll let you
Okay. So, a lot of chasers don't think or know that they're chasers. I think there's a dignity in it, in the fact that nobody thinks that they're marginalizing somebody they want to have sex with. Nobody thinks that they're turning somebody that they're trying to get intimate with into an object. But inherently, a lot of the dating that I do, it borders on that. There's a focus on you that is unnatural. There's a focus on certain parts of you that is severely unnatural, and it gives you a creepy feeling. So no, I don't continue after that when I get that feeling. It's like, why would you continue to date somebody you know for a fact is just with you because of, it's like a shiny new toy. Your mystique's gonna wear off, and it happens so often. You know what I'm saying? I've known guys who've literally dated every trans woman I know. It's not because he loves trans women, because when he's with one, he always cheats with other trans women. You see what I'm saying? And it can't be a love thing because I've seen somebody actually pour themselves into him. Like I said, I've seen him date multiple of my friends, and it was really weird. Seeing somebody that, you know, used to date one of your homegirls is now dating another one of your homegirls. You're like, okay. Then he breaks up with her, and he's dating another one of your homegirls. You're like, it's a little bit weird. Why is this guy getting around like this? So, for me, I like to keep things normal. That ain't normal for me. Sorry.
I'll reveal another one of my statuses, and that is that I'm post-op. So I've had bottom surgery about 7 years ago. that does make a difference in the lesbian community, um, because usually when a woman does find out I'm transgender, the second question then she asks, of course, is, well, do you have a vagina? Something along those lines. However, it does it does bring to force something else, which is that I think when people think of chasers, they always think of men as being chasers, and the truth is actually there are women who are chasers as well. And um, I know I had a transgender friend of mine that before she had surgery, she would in the lesbian clubs, and there was many times she said that women would approach her, knowing what her op status was before she had surgery, and solicit her, and they would have sex, and then she wouldn't get a call from them after that. And um, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. Maybe they want to have a certain experience they don't feel they can have with another woman quite the same way, and they don't want to have sex with the men, so with a man rather, and we're some sort of living loophole. I think, I think with, I think there's some men who have cisgender men who maybe have the same experience with trans women, that want to. Of course, there's a lot of men out there who do want to have sex with trans women. Cisgender men who have sex with pre-op trans women. Like Shay was saying, it's not actually hard to get sex. Sex is actually pretty easy. It's much, much harder to find somebody who wants a relationship beyond that. Uh, so I think we're seen as sexual playthings, not just by men but by women, and I think a lot of that has to do with the way society portrays us in the media. So you don't have to go very far to see images of us in that way.
One of the, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I thought you were asking me if I wanted something to drink. I was like, yes. No. Okay. Um, yes, being fetishized was a big fear and worry for me, and it's something that because of the type of responses that I was getting, I became very disgusted with the population as a whole and the human race. And I'm like, maybe I should just give this up. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just focus on trans men because at least with trans men, they understand what I'm going through. And at one point, I was so desperate for affection and attention, I actually put up with the fetishizing because it was the only attention I was getting. And then it just made me feel even worse about myself because it was like I was just this thing, and not an actual person. So now I won't even deal with it or tolerate it. If you're not responding to me as an actual person, or instead of a sexual thing, it's like I can't deal. I won't tolerate it.
Okay. I don't really have much to say about it.
So no, we don't tolerate it.
Another question? Cannot tell me there are no questions in this room about sex or dating. Sweet. Probably not
No,
reached. Do
I'm
you want
good.
to walk up?
I personally found that even with the small dating pool after transition, that it was actually better for me because it was just so difficult for me to do that before. Did any of you have that kind of experience where even as hard as it is now, it was actually worse before?
Yes, I can say for me. I say yes because before transition, I male presenting. I hung out with gay men. I went to gay clubs. I never had sex as a gay man. When I was presenting as a male, I literally abstained from sex the entire time. Um, so I find it better as I've transitioned only because I feel more comfortable in my body. I feel more comfortable with the people I'm having sex with. Like I said, I'm very open about who I am, um, and what I'm doing with my body. So if I'm having sex with somebody, attention needs to be a little bit everywhere. So um, I find it a lot better when I'm dating someone now because I feel as though it's more of a open situation, if you understand that.
That's a very difficult question for me to answer personally because I think I was so introverted before and so scared about other people finding out that there was something weird about me, quote unquote, before my transition that I, even though objectively I look back at myself now and I was a pretty good looking guy. I think at the time I internalized that as actually I was very unattractive. So I actually would not date anybody. In fact, the first woman I kissed, I married. And I was married to her for 15 years. So I didn't get divorced until I was nearly 40. So then I was then thrust into this dating world as if I was in my 20s, that experience that most people have at that age, I was having later on. And then, of course, in the lesbian community, which is very different than the straight woman community, different expectations, different language. Um, I've kissed a lot more women than one now. Uh, However, I would not say that my dating experience is easier now. Um, I and I'm only comparing it to my other cisgender counterparts. I would say that they have a much easier time dating than I do. It's only easier insofar as that I am now who I was, I think, meant to be, and so in that regard, I think I have more confidence in who I am. Um, However, I think it's I think it's very hard to date when you have this kind of baggage, overhead. So I think that just makes sense. However, I do believe that if I was a cisgender lesbian at 48, I would be in a relationship or have had many more relationships in the last. Let's see, I've been divorced now about 8 years. My ex-wife got married within a year. Uh, I have had I would only characterize it as three serious relationships and nothing that lasted longer than 6 months. So, that's 8 years, 8.5 years, that's a long time. Uh, I've had more casual sexual encounters than that, but nothing that really I would characterize as a serious relationship. So I would say it's just difficult.
I think it's difficult for me. Um, I used to date bisexual women, and now I don't really know exactly where I'd fit in. There was a lot of chasers then, you know, and now I'm just keeping myself kind of unavailable, really, uh, because I'm kind of trying to figure out, really some other things, you know, but I don't really know where I fit into it now, you know. So it is a lot more difficult for me, I think.
Easier only now for me recently because I finally accepted who I am. Before I was kind of fighting against it, and in my mind, anybody that didn't want to date a trans person was a bigot. And now I'm like, no, I respect it, I understand. Before it was much harder for me because I wasn't understanding why I wasn't connecting with heterosexual men. There was this disconnect there. Um, Sex wasn't I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't falling in love with them. My friends were getting married and having kids, and there was just something missing, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Although I always in the back of my mind suspected what it was, I didn't want that to be true. And I kept trying to force myself to be this heterosexual woman that I knew internally I was not. And I remember I'd had sex with a guy, one night stands, and now I know why that was. And I would look for some excuse to get rid of them. And I remember one guy asking me, did I enjoy it? And I lied and said yes, but he could tell that, I was lying and that I didn't enjoy being with him. And he eventually stopped calling me. And so for me now, I'm happier because I know who I am. I'm who I'm supposed to be. So although, yes, I get irritated and frustrated because the dating process is harder, and but it's not something that's because I'm living a lie. So it's easier now for me now in that way because I've accepted who I am.
Excellent. Questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering, especially since a lot of you are in more than one marginalized community. I've lived in a lot of different places, and I was wondering if you found that Florida when it comes to dating in the queer community and like the queer community as a whole. As you have experienced it in Florida, like how does that compare to other places if you have lived other places?
Low key, I hate it too. I want to say there are places where dating being trans is a breeze. It feels so much better. Um, in the fact that you can be more open with somebody. I know being in the South, sometimes you meet a guy who's really into you, but because of what he's scared of somebody seeing him, or he's scared of somebody finding out that he's dating someone trans. There's always a caveat to why he's with you. I've been to places like New York or Miami and dating somebody as trans. It's not a huge deal. You know what I'm saying? Those are bigger cities where they're not really concerned with who sees them. Trans people are everywhere. Um, not saying that there aren't pitfalls in those places, but I find finding someone who is a little bit more open is a lot easier out of the South, I feel. Only because like there's a whole like religious undertow down here. There's a whole like political undertow down here. The South is just full of like sludge of America. It all just runs down, you know what I'm saying? So, um, so yes, I do find that in other places it is easier. Not saying that you can't find love here. It's just it's a little bit harder. It's gonna be like we've all said, it's gonna be more of an education process because you find people down here who don't want to educate themselves on anything but a man and a woman. In other places where people have had no choice but to encounter other kinds of people, they've had no choice but to educate themselves. So I think with a little bit of time, space, education, and fermentation, the South can be made whole again.
To what you're saying, but I was also born in Polk County.
Ah.
You feel me now. Okay. Yeah, so no, I hear what you're saying.
Okay. So
And by the way, we got one more, right? And that's it. Like, one more response.
I'm originally from New York. I did not come out when I was living in New York, though. I came out when I was living in Texas. I will say something. Orlando is the largest small town you're gonna meet. You're never gonna see. So I've lived in New York. I've lived in Houston, which are they're actually 1 and 4 in terms of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. Um, I've also lived in New Jersey, and now I live in Orlando. I actually love Orlando. I don't love the dating here all that much, but I do love Orlando. Um, there is a very large queer community here, comparatively speaking to other towns our size in the country. But even in large cities, there's always going to be problems. I think the reason that I think if you're a lesbian, you've seen the O word. The idea that Alice is creating that chart of everyone who slept with everybody, and we're talking about and and we're talking about WeHo. We're talking about a large metropolitan area that you still have those same dynamics as everybody slept with everybody, everybody knows everybody. However, I think I'm more limited in Orlando, not so much by being a lesbian woman, so much as just my age. I think when it comes to dating in general, age actually is the top limiting factor for me, and then being transgender, and then being lesbian. Yeah, sorry, honey. Because when I do notice when I go home to New York, and I go home quite often. My sisters still live there, and I still have a lot of friends there. If I'm on any kind of dating app, I will match with so many people when I'm back in New York. People that I'm like, oh wow, I wish I lived here. Because yeah, losing power. Because they seem to be exactly the kind of person I'm looking for. They're a professional person in their 40s. That seems to be open to a lot. And I'm here. I'm matching with a lot more people who are 30, 32, and maybe they're still in school, and I don't want to raise my girlfriend. If they're especially in their 20s. I don't want to shepherd them through all these aspects of life. I don't want to introduce him to my 17-year-old son and say, "Hey, you're only 8 years older than him," something like that. So, I think that's more of a limiting factor in terms of, I think the dating pools are going to be larger in large metropolitan areas, but I think that also means just one thing I learned is that when you have larger dating pools, it just means a lot more mediocrity too. It doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to have a lot, but you're also going to have a lot more of that what you're looking for, and I think that is important. So, yeah, hey, if you're thinking of moving, give New York or LA a shot. I think I've thought of that myself, but I think we underestimate Orlando a little bit in terms of what we have available here, and for a city that's about 200,000 in size, and goes up to about 2 million when you take in the larger metropolitan area, we actually have it not that bad, but I wouldn't say not that bad is great.
Time, right? Awesome. Thank you all. No, I think we're good. Are you guys? I don't want anybody to not to be able to say something if they wanted to, but no, I think we're good.
Everybody good?
I think we're good.
So this kind of wraps it up. We have one more that finishes in 15 minutes, and that'll kind of wrap up our day. It's been a long day. I want to thank Jennifer, who came over from St. Pete to monitor 2 of the panels for us today. Maya, the band played last night. If you didn't hear her, you missed something really, really good. Shay has been on the planning committee and actually was on the committee that picked out all the different panels that we had today and the presentations. PJ has also helped me out, and Phoenix, sorry. When you change your name, it throws me off. So Phoenix, this is your 3rd presentation today?
Yep.
Okay, and did we introduce ourselves as Mark or?
Dixon, Mella Johnson,
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually heard Dixon, Mella, Mark Johnson before, and that's why I asked him to come back again. And so he's been working the registration table today for us and helping out and everything. So I'd like to thank all of you all for coming. I know people want to do this again, so as soon as they find somebody who wants to be in charge of it, they can start planning. But thank you all so much. There's another 15 minutes of the parents panel, and then I think some of you are coming back for dinner tonight. So thank you again for coming, and thank you all again for helping out.